these are the kind of people that when I think about Remy Tinubu, with all due respect, and God bless her, I think about Maria Antoinette, and I'm just gonna stop there.
Yeah, just stop there, man. Yeah, let's not go.
Let's not go too deep into that, shall we? So you're currently listening to the TBD podcast with my friends David, Covan, and myself, Rex, and obviously looking at the political atmosphere of the world today. It just seems like everything is in disarray. However, we, who I think people could call us geeks or nerds, political nerds or international or global system nerds or geeks, I just think we decided to make this podcast, to bring fresh perspective, especially in regards to our personal opinions. And if you're looking within our group, you see that we have an idealist, a realist, and I wouldn't say, an idealist and realist are mostly the two ideas we have right now. However, we're open to expand as we go on. And today we'll be talking about something regarding international relations. And the topic has to do with personalities of political leaders and how it affects leadership styles and leadership patterns and how they perform their leadership roles. And to be honest, due to the United States election, we see that a very, very prominent political figure seems to be on the rise right now, who is Donald Trump, by the way. But we're not just going to be talking about him, we're going to be talking about so much more. And so we'll be diving straight into it. And obviously, on the first agenda here, I'd just like to push it to my friends and say, to you, what do you think leadership is?
Okay. Um, my name is Covan, has already been introduced. So, what leadership is to me basically is just a set of rules or the patterns to which a leader or an authority uses to guide his people towards a common goal. It might be for advancing society, it might be towards the aim for a particular policy. It might be generally just to help grow the society or community or company or whatever sphere they find themselves in, basically.
Yeah, David.
So I believe that leadership is more of a practice. It's basically like the ability of a person to be able to like guide or inspire or influence a particular group of people to achieve maybe like a set goal or a set vision that they have amongst themselves or something.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's basically mostly what leadership is. It's just the ability like to lead people, to guide them, to influence decisions on their behalf. I think that's what leadership entails on the most part. And so like when we talk about leadership now, there are so many aspects that you can talk about when you talk about leadership, especially as it relates to international relations and the global and political systems. And now there are different influences on global leadership. And so, like, what do you think on a personal level? What do you think what do you think these influences are? Because there are certain things that seem to influence the type of leaders that that seem to emerge in the world. And if you take it back to the ancient times in the Middle Ages, you see a pattern of leadership that was going on in that time, and then you bring it to the modern era in the 21st century. We see that
Yeah.
a pattern in leadership qualities in the global system among some of the leading powers. There seems to be a similarity in how they rule. So, like, what do you think are those influences that like influence the emergence of this kind of characters?
So yeah, basically, as you said, looking at leadership and how it has been viewed or evolved, we see that personally, when I was looking at it, I discovered that most people view leadership as in the 19th century, the 1800s, as an innate ability. They believe that leaders were born and they were not made. That was a common mantra amongst
Mhm.
most leaders at that point in time. And if we have to put into context, we have to really understand that most leaders at that point in time were male. So this, if we're being honest with ourselves, there was this patriotic aspect of it that they believe that leaders were born and not made, and it was more innate and all that. But we see that eventually, with the rise of psychology and biographical analysis, things such as childhood, societal upbringing, family, and their own peculiar experiences became crucial to determining what influences leaders.
Mm.
Yeah, and what influences their leadership styles. And we see that even in recent times, leadership analysis has even looked even beyond the leaders, but rather towards the people that they are leading. What are the expectations that they have? How do the expectations of the population now drive the leaders? Because there are certain policies that they might take that may even go against their own belief, but that's what the people at that particular time are crying for. That's what they are demanding for. Like when I was researching, there was an article that explained how the political landscape and the economic landscape, political and economic landscape of Germany in the late 1930s was literally extremely ripe for Hitler to thrive in. Not to go too deep into it, but basically what I was saying was that aside his own personal beliefs and the beliefs of his party, after the end of the First World War and all the reparations, all the charges they faced from the Treaty of Versailles and all that, the writers of that period in time were already anti-Semitic, they were already anti-European government, they were already filled with so much hatred for every other person aside themselves. So it was easy for that type of leadership to grow in that kind of situation. So we see that the people were ripe for that mentality. Just get someone that had the courage to move ahead with it. So we see that these are kind of the things that have influenced leadership styles. And we see that any leader that grew up in certain times whereby there was economic hardship or some kind of disparity, like when I go into my case study, I'll delve further into that, not to go too much into that, but different things, as I said before, they believe that it was innate. Then we looked at the experiences of people, and then we also see that setting expectations that become from the population can influence what they feel is, so it can influence their leadership style. So yeah, that's how I view leadership so far.
It's actually quite nice that you spoke about family upbringing, the innate ability. Some of them thought they were destined to be leaders from birth,
Yeah,
and I think those are some of the things that like influenced leadership qualities, especially in the medieval periods. Because now we're drawing a parallel between the medieval periods and the modern era. I would see that I think that was mostly, especially when it comes to spirituality and providence. However,
Mm-hmm.
you can still draw a parallel between like within that aspect and bring it to the modern era. For example, looking at Donald Trump, for example, you see that he as a president of the United States, he thinks he's been ordained by God in a way.
God.
You understand what I'm
yeah,
saying? So,
Mhm.
what do you think about that, David?
Personally, I think that I totally disagree with the whole concept of leadership being inborn, or like you were born as a leader,
Oh,
or
we're not
all
we're
those
not
things.
agreeing with
Nobody.
it. We're just saying that that was what they thought.
Yeah,
yeah.
I know, but I'm trying to tell you that that concept, I personally do not agree with that ideology.
Mm.
Do you get? Because
Honestly, I'll tell you right now that I agree with it, but I want to hear what you have to say about that first.
I don't think anybody was born like you were just giving birth to, and then all of a sudden you thought, "Oh, I was born to be a leader" or something like that. Me personally, I feel like it's more of in terms of context, or like society that would groom you, several
Yeah,
circumstances, your personal upbringing that
Mhm.
would actually groom you into being a leader. And it is not just that, oh, I was born today and then I knew I was going to be president when I was born. Do you get? It was maybe the circumstances I found myself made me like stand up for myself, or to stand up for my society and actually try as much as possible to lead them. So it is like me. I personally feel like one of the major things that influenced leadership was prevailing circumstances. I think we can also like draw this into the whole social contract theory of when like society or something is going on and then there is a need for somebody to lead or to direct, and then
yeah,
because of certain circumstances you just decide that, oh, I want to do this, I want to be a doer, I want to be the action taker, and then you move on with it. So it is not just I was born and I'm a leader. Do you get?
Yeah, I
yeah,
get where you're coming from, and you actually make a valid argument. However, I believe that not everyone is called. Like people are shaped by societies to become leaders. And now I'll draw
Mm-hmm.
a parallel. Now, if I draw a parallel between, let's say, Joseph Stalin and Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, who is referred to as the King of Kings, we see that
Mm-hmm.
when Haile Selassie was to be born, because his parents had been struggling, his parents who were also monarchs had been struggling to conceive, and then some people from a faraway land came and they ministered to his father and said, "You're gonna give birth to a son. He's gonna be a great leader. However, he's gonna also destroy the things that he used his hand to build." Right? And then we'd see that it kind of built like a background around Haile Selassie that would create a platform for him. And we'd see that usually. Well, let's talk about Joseph Stalin. You see Joseph Stalin, for example. Now you speak about society. When we look at
Mm-hmm.
these leaders, we see the mark of society forging them for leadership, and it doesn't
Yeah.
happen to everybody. Like I'm not, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. It doesn't happen
Mm.
to everybody. For example, if you look at Joseph Stalin, for example, abusive father, mother who was struggling to make ends meet. She dies early. The father abandons them. He grows up in a Christian school, basically, in a Gori church school. That's where he had his education. He had a scholarship. He was trained by priests. You see that all these things, and then you would grow up, and then you start building ideologies that were developed in him by the church. He starts being sentimental towards the Bolsheviks, who um sort of
Rebels.
supported the idea of communism or socialism by John Lennon, that was being proposed by John Lennon at this time. And you see that all these things, he wasn't the only person that passed through an abusive father. Mother dies early. He wasn't the only person. And now you could also draw another parallel to Vladimir Putin of the modern era. You see that
Mm-hmm.
this guy was laid dead beside his mother as a baby. His mother was shot dead during the World War II. Was it World War II? Yeah. His mom was on the floor dead and he was laid beside her and someone rescued him. These things are not just normal. This is providence. And I don't think none of these things are coincidences, because coincidences cannot have a pattern. And when you see patterns like this reflecting through through history, especially all the way from the medieval to the modern time, I cannot continue to say or say within myself that these are coincidences.
But then you're still describing circumstances around them.
Yes,
Do you get what I mean?
yeah, I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm saying circumstances gives them a mandate, whereas
Okay.
other people might follow. Other people who experience the same circumstances as these people
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
what.
might not get the same mandate.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I agree to disagree, but let's go. No problem.
I, can we also talk about how much education plays into leadership, especially into leadership and even the development of personalities of some of these leaders. And I want you guys to expatiate based on your
Mm-hmm.
case studies.
Oh, okay. Yeah, education plays it. Sorry, the reason why I jumped in is because my case study is actually the Benjamin Netanyahu, the current prime minister for Israel. And as you mentioned, I can see clearly how education played a major role in his personality as a leader. Because quick backstory: his father was born to a Polish man during the whole repatriation of Jewish people back to their current land now in like 1946 or so when they came back, or 1948. So when his father came back, he changed his surname to Netanyahu to sound more Jewish and all that. And his father was a scholar, and basically he had Benjamin and two other brothers. He was the middle child and all. Then eventually his father was a professor in Jewish studies and some other things, and had the opportunity to travel to the USA. Then he took his entire family, and we see that Netanyahu followed alongside his family, eventually graduated from high school, and he got into MIT, where he studied architecture. And then he had to go back home for like a 3 year military training. He eventually fought in the 40 Days War, and also in the 6 Days War, the Yom Kippur War. Then he had his masters again in, I think, in management, and he
Mm,
decided to work for a consulting group, the Boston Consulting Group. That was in the early 60s. And then he now went to Harvard to study political science before now returning to Israel. And that's what to say is that all of these things definitely influence his view or his personality when it came to leadership, because
Do
as
you
at that
think?
period in
Do you
time,
think that? Do
Israel
you
was,
think? Sorry. Do you think there's a pattern like that can be drawn within education styles? For example, like education styles when it comes to there's specific education, and now if you're drawing a
yes,
parallel between the modern kind of education and the, for example, medieval and even way beyond that, you'd see that the education is totally different in the way they are being, in the way it's being
Administered.
imparted. You understand?
Mhm.
However, it's still
yeah.
education. So, like, how then does this specificity, sorry, of the type of education on these particular leaders, how does it affect their leadership styles and even effect?
I think particularly the way it affected Benjamin was the fact that as of that time in USA, there was a growing influx of Jewish people, and Jewish people held the realms in a lot of banks and all those things. So, aside even the education he faced in school, but just what he gained from society, he saw that ideology of how Jewish people could be ahead, could be not behind or face all the challenges that were faced in that were ongoing within Palestine. Because when he returned and then he joined the political party and then leaving all his other involvement behind the USA, because he had actually planned to stay back there. You see that he became a more, how will I put it? I don't want to use a word that is too strong, but basically he was more aggressive in his political ideologies than others, in the sense
Yeah.
that people were still trying to. I think that period was the Oslo Accords was ongoing around that period in the 70s or in the late 60s, about.
Mhm.
And then he was moving aggressively because while they were the whole world, the UN, the US, and everybody was trying to make a way for Palestine and Israel to both coexist, he was trying to believe that okay, Israel has to exist regardless of whatever happens to Palestine at that point in time. So I think that ideology of seeing, and America is a social melting pot for all kind of people. Everybody comes in and thrives. It has always been like that. So aside the education he even got to school, or just that belief that the Jewish people can succeed or should succeed, was that ideology that forged his own leadership style to be quite aggressive, regardless of not even trying to see a stalemate or not even trying to see a compromise of some sort. I believe, anyways.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I think education too, it's like a fundamental part of what brings leaders, like what up brings leadership or something like that. I think we see that in now coming back to Africa. A significant example would be Mandela. We see that Mandela grew up in like one of like the poor environments and stuff like that, and see he was able to like leave his hometown, and then he went to study law, and then this sort of like pushed him into the sense of activism, knowing laws, legal duties, and everything, and then this transitioned him into participating in the ANC, the political party ANC, and everything. And then we saw that his knowledge, basically the idea of education that he gathered, was what eventually helped him push to fight against inequality, and he did it in a way that was according to the law. Because of his knowledge, his existing knowledge of the law, he was able to actually push for the equality and everything based on his idea and his knowledge and stuff like that.
He did, however, organize some terror attacks, though, like revolts that were very, very terroristic in nature.
Yeah, I guess.
Would you say that it was terroristic in nature
I
to
know,
a
I know, I
large
know, I
extent,
know that the
or
idea is freedom fighting. I
it
know
was a protest? It was a protest that escalated because of the opposing party's inputs.
he was blowing up buses. He was blowing up buses, burning.
That was a reaction to the apartheid government's policies. So
But I
Okay.
guess what David is
it
trying to say is that, sorry, I guess what David is trying to say that he, with his educational knowledge, he still tried to pass some equality laws still under the
exactly.
apartheid government. I guess that's what he's trying to say, that even he maneuvered his way because he was smart enough to see how to use the system to benefit the greater good of the South Africans.
Through his
And I think he did
education,
that
that
quite
is.
well. Yes,
And then
like through his education,
one
of
major
course.
thing that I think education does is it prompts, like it brings about critical thinking. I mean,
Yes.
Mandela might as well be like a local man that is a cobbler, and then he just sits and feels like, oh, he's making making a decent amount of money, and then he doesn't need to do anything. But because he went to school and he gained certain education, he was able to like critically think that, oh, this is not what I'm supposed to do. This is not the place I'm supposed to be. And what is the way forward for me and people that look like me and all. So I think it also shapes the personality as well as the leadership quality of the person as well. Yeah.
I mean, in the complete opposite, in the complete opposite of that, we had Idi Amin of Uganda that almost extinguished the entire elite class because he felt that they were a threat to him and they were more knowledgeable than him. So we can see how also a lack of education can also affect someone's personality and leadership quality.
I think that is like, I think that's like the influence of, not to blame anybody, but I feel like it's more or less like the influence of westernization. I mean, it happened in Nigeria, where they would exclude like the elite or the intelligent one and make some illiterates warrant chiefs of kings and stuff like that, and they will feel exalted and stuff like that. Not knowing
particular that stuff. I was thinking about it today. I was thinking about the fact that the Europeans and the colonizers were, in fact, the people that orchestrated the end of their colonial like holds on some of these territories. Because if you look at Ethiopia, they sponsored people to go abroad and study, and they came back and became like the new elites who would destroy the social class. And the same thing happened in Nigeria as well. These guys came back and decided that we're going to build churches, we're going to build schools, and we're going to tear down this colonization. And the same thing happened in so many African countries. So yeah, but that's a diversion. However, I would like to point out two special characters, when I speak about the specificity of education and how it affects leadership styles and patterns, or even the leadership achievements. I want to because one person I love talking about is Kublai Khan of the Mongol Empire. Kublai Khan, and you see that he had a very strong, powerful mother who was sort of a Christian, which is very odd, by the way. Sogatani, and he trained each of our boys to become kings, to become leaders, to become monarchs, and their training was specifically to be leaders. And you see that within this training, she would impart in them the teachings of tolerance, to imbibe Christianity. And that's why during Kublai Khan reign, you'd see that in his council, he had Christians, Muslims, Arabs, Middle Easterns, all these people together. And these teachings, because it was only taught to him and his brothers specifically, it will contrast to the normal Mongol like pattern. And you see that he would get like drawbacks from his Mongol people, because they were like, yo, why are you putting all these Chinese people in your council? Why are you putting all these Arab people in your council? However, it was as a result of his education that influenced that. And you can also look at Haile Selassie as well. It was when he was adopted by his uncle, who was the king, who was the emperor of Ethiopia at this time. And Ethiopia was a majorly Asian Christian nation empire. And you see that while he was adopted by his uncle after the death of his parents, you see that the emperor would teach him politics and just the intricacies of politics, and that would be what he would use to rule. And I think most of the time, I believe that when it comes to specificity of education, that's where the saying holds true when it says you cannot give what you don't have. Because these guys are only given the only things they learn. And you can even look back to Alexander the Great. He was probably exercising everything in Socrates. Was it Socrates or Aristotle? Socrates taught him. He was probably exercising those things that was taught to him. And so these guys cannot rule beyond their education.
What do you know?
Knowledge of how they think is how to rule. I'm not sure if you understand what I mean by that.
Yeah,
I get you.
Don't you think, like, instead of education, because I know one major influence of leadership and personality and stuff like that, it's more of like their cultural and religious value? Or do you want to is it possible to also fusion it with education?
No, it's totally different. That's what
I think that stands on its own, definitely.
When we're talking about a divination, some of people think they have been called by God to rule. It might not be true, but they believe it. You understand what I mean? For example, For example, Kublai Khan, he thought he was ordained by the gods of the sky to rule the people of Mongol and to expand his empire beyond the regions of the horizons. The same with Haile Selassie. He literally was referred to as the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, because he believed that it was from the lineage of Solomon. The same thing with John Lennon. His priest told him he was going to become a powerful leader, and I was going to liberate was it Russia? Yeah, the Soviet Union, and he held on to those beliefs. I think even though it might not be true, divinity, their religion, their beliefs, especially as it relates to religion and beliefs, I think
Yeah.
plays a very very huge role in how some of these people rule. Like if you
Yeah,
look at Trump,
especially in the UK as well, when you
yeah,
have like the whole monarchy system and Mhm.
so like we can talk about the difference in ideas. Like we can talk about how they come about the ideas of their personal ideas for how they are going to rule.
Mhm.
Some of these guys just wake up.
Yeah.
They don't just wake up one day and say, "This is how we're going to rule."
Mhm.
So what do you think?
So, for example, looking at, I think the most common example we know about is Germany, as I've stated before. And we all know that due to the things that happened to them, how their economy crashed, and it was literally a special situation because I read an article where they said that Germany was literally ripe for that kind of situation because we see that socially, economically, and everything politically they were failing. And we see that it was not an attempt to revitalize their government. That's not even what they were looking for. It was they were literally seeking out revenge. So most of the policies that came up, the entire Nazi party, because when they came up, the first thing they did was take out the communist parties and other parties that were there. They literally made sure that the Nazi party was the only party. They even took out the parliament. They changed from a democracy to a totalitarian government almost immediately once they got votes. I would say that it was more of a group of people, generally people that were affected by the First World War, either by in the sense that their parents or they were born in those hard conditions. So we see that those things fuel the ideology of not just Hitler, honestly, every single person that was subordinate to him. We see that after the end of the Second World War, when some of them were taken to face the courts for their crimes against humanity, some of them were held for their crimes against humanity. They confessed to the fact that it was due to the activity of the First World War that fueled their hatred. So it's not like they were even. What I'm trying to say that the reason why they became an authoritarian government or a totalitarian government was not even to revitalize their economy or hold their economy by the helms and pull it up, but it was basically a revenge against the entire of the world. And those are the things that fueled them. They could have easily become a democracy if they wanted. They have easily become a democracy if they wanted to just build their economy or something. But it was like they became a totalitarian government because they wanted to change the circumstances of Germany against the West.
Yes,
I do totally agree with that. That they became like because they like if they wanted to change their economy, they would have been democratic.
no, I don't agree. I don't agree.
I feel like
Yeah, because I believe that most totalitarian governments most times they feel like their government has like they've diverted away from the righteous path or something like that, and then they feel like it's up to them to restructure it and then put
Mhm.
it right on the right path and something like that. And I think that also falls in with economy because the better their economy, the better or the richer they become.
Mhm.
So I think it is also one of
yeah,
like their pathways and on how to like deal with the whole thing. I think what that was even one of the main reason
that
why
makes
we
sense.
had aside the whole tribal issues in Nigeria, one of that reasons why like the military came in and everything was also because of the economy. They wanted to control like the whole economic aspect of the country and something like that. So I don't think like democratic government. Well, I mean, we are seeing our democracy, and are we doing better? Let's. Mm,
Let's be for real.
mm.
Let's be for real. And I would also like to point out something I coined as first contact ideology. I believe
Mhm.
that some of these leaders, the first things they come in contact with as they grow up is what shapes their ideologies in the long run. For
Mm.
example, John Lennon, as it relates to
Yeah,
Marxism, what's his name? Kublai Khan, as it relates to tolerance and expansionism, and Haile Selassie is related to just acquiring power and basically to collect the powers of divinity. He basically did not have any economic idea because Ethiopia was impoverished. but he was able to maintain his face of value in the international community. And I think Haile Selassie is what best describes impoverishment at home, glory abroad, as Professor would say. And so I think he was so that it goes back to the idea that you cannot give what you don't have. And so I believe that the first ideologies that these people come about is what eventually shapes their leadership styles in the long run. I just think that I don't think it's not a consensus. I just that's what I've been able to draw out from all the things I've been looking at and studying, especially in relation to the patterns of some of these leaders, because some of them it's usually and with their policies and their ideologies, it's usually a hit or miss. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What you just said about the whole glory abroad, enormity at home, just remind me of something I saw on LinkedIn this afternoon, and I think that's why this international relations or international affairs is actually good, because what the person posted was like, oh, the economy is bad, and then it is not as if Nigerians don't love Nigeria, but the situation is taking them out of Nigeria. And that it wasn't like Obasanjo's time where you had people in diaspora come back because the whole situation in Nigeria was good. And I mean, like,
they don't know the real deal. They don't know the real deal.
I'm like, huh? That means like outside. I actually thought it was good to return back to the country. It was just crazy.
But, you know, that's what someone said something today. It was like you can determine that there's an old adage that says you can determine the greatness of a leader by the quality of the leaders that come after him. And I think that's absolutely prosperous, because it's like saying Buhari is a good president because Tinubu is terrible. That makes absolutely so yeah.
Or the whole argument of him being better as a military ruler than him being better in a democratic government.
People are always quick to forget how they suffered.
But what do you guys think, even like looking at our own president now, what do you guys think is the thing that shaped his whole ideology? Like, what do you think shaped his ideology?
Honestly, I just think it's total like thievery.
Probably greed too.
Just greed, bro. There's nothing.
Anyway. And then you would even see that it is not just him. It is like a hereditary something, because his son. Oh my God! Nah, let's just.
God forgive me. Anyway, let's move on to our social media platform. Let's talk about Netanyahu being wanted by the ICC. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, today was my CDS, so I think international news, and I actually spoke on this because when I was researching the night prior, it was one of the things that popped up like an automatic update in recent news. And while I was reading it was actually quite funny to me that he was served the warrant by the ICC. First of all, he called them anti-Semitic and racist, which is what he literally says to anybody that stands against him. So that one is normal. But then most of the other people that he was served alongside with were mostly dead. If you check some of the names, if you read down on the CNN page, actually, some of the other guys, I think the Yawa Sinwa that he killed in earlier in September or when, and that just shows you the amount of. I mean, if you and some other group of people are being accused of committing crimes against humanity and they are already even dead by your hand, does that not prove that you're actually really, really doing a lot of killing? Alongside all these things.
Sorry, let's talk about how useless. Like, in fact, let's not talk about it. Let's just state it how useless the UNSC is, the ICC is, because didn't they also do this? Didn't they also do this thing to Putin when he first attacked Ukraine? They also did this. They also issued a warrant.
I think so, yeah.
You know, and that's why I wanted to actually say something that at least they're actually showing, consideration, because if you look at it, all this while when the whole bombing and everything was going on, they were all silent, and then when the whole thing has somehow calmed down, you're not coming to give him papers that he's wanted, he should be arrested and stuff like that. When you know, like, one of the most powerful nations in the whole world is strongly behind Israel. I saw a tweet about something from Biden, like from the president Joe Biden, about the warrants from the ICC, where he was like, the issuance of the arrest warrants was somehow like outrageous, and there's no equivalence between Israel and Hamas, and then they will continue to stand with. And then then after that particular tweet, someone made a comment that I just felt like was so crazy. The person said international law is a law that does not exist in any meaningful way. It is whatever the strongest country decides to do, nothing more, nothing less.
Is there a
Like
lie
it
there?
just
Is there a lie there?
there is none. Like it just reconfirmed the fact that these organizations are just useless. Like they are not functioning. They are not, like, personally, like I was asked the question in one application that I was having for one forum and something like that, or one thing I would change if I was to reform the United Nations. And I think one thing I actually argued so much was to revisit the issue of veto power, because it is either it is scrapped completely, or it is given maybe to like one country
Or it's given to
one
everyone.
or each continent, that everybody actually has like a representing voice and something like that. Because now you have multiple representations from maybe from Europe, America, Asia, and stuff like that. And then what happened to the other continents and stuff like that? So
I feel like
just,
the continent one would even be worse.
yeah, probably, Sha, because everybody
How?
would just turn it to a tussle.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, ICJ has been quiet, not doing anything. The ICC has just been there. The UNSC is even worse. Those ones are just there looking. And I think something that also we have to look at is actually the peacekeeping operations and stuff like that. Normally, they are always being deployed to places like this to ease up tension, to assist and something like that. But then there is even nothing about them. So are you saying like the whole United Nations structure is not working at all? Do you get?
Yeah.
But I think there was a period in time whereby I think, I think, considering what David said about peacekeeping operations, but I think there was a time, I think maybe around the same time last year when the crisis began, or earlier in the year, that's is it Red Cross or something? Some people were sent to pull out survivors and something, and then they were bombed. I don't know if any other person saw it and something. So I'm surprised that with that kind of thing, who want to send peacekeeping ops if and these are the things that are proving that he actually broke some rules of engagement. You understand? And then things like that, people going to the border and then they are being bombed at the border after saying that you ensure safe passing to Egypt and so many other things, and then it's coming to say he has done nothing wrong and all that. And statistics even show, according to what CNN wrote, that he's the first person in the 76-year crisis between Palestine and Israel. He's the first Israeli given a warrant for arrest for crimes against humanity. Every other thing has been towards the Palestinians and Hamas and all that. That just shows that, okay, he may have been fighting for his country, but he has definitely done some inhumane things, if we're being completely honest.
Obviously.
He clearly had a form of hatred towards them.
I do not.
For him to kill that Yitzhak Rabin guy that was already trying to like bring peace with the Hamas governance and stuff like that, and instantly he killed him and stuff like that. He showed that he didn't want the peace. He wanted to be on top.
He wants total decimation of them. I think that's what he wants.
Exactly. That's what's true.
And that even points out the whole personality thing we are talking about.
Yeah, but like, also, you have to take into consideration that it is also war, and the Hamas people were the first aggressors. However, the losers are always the ones on the side for sympathy. However, I'm not condoning what Israel is doing. Netanyahu is a monster because of how many kids and women.
Yeah, if we're being real, yeah.
However, when we're talking about international politics, there's also something we refer to as raison d'etat, which is basically the reason of the state.
Reason of state.
Everything that he's doing is in consequence in national interest. The same thing what Putin is doing.
Yeah.
However,
completely.
However, there's also what we call international morality, and that's where this ICC stuff comes in.
I think it's true, especially looking at the Russian issue, because they are trying to protect their borders from the widespread of NATO and all that, which is actually smart politically from their country's perspective, but it is flat out wrong and immoral for you to tell a country what to do, a sovereign
Exactly.
country
Don't touch
what
on
not
that.
to do.
You should not
So
do
that's where the
Yeah.
conflict comes.
when
Yeah.
NATO. However, it also they are also defending their own interest.
Yeah,
I
so
think there
they
was an
can argue in
agreement
courts
of
that
I
it
think there
was
was an earlier
rational
agreement for
to
NATO
their
not to
parts.
advance. Something
Yes,
like
that
that.
was in 1999, I think.
Bruh, those guys.
He said NATO wouldn't advance an inch into Russian territory. However, I think that stuff was null and void as a result of Russia themselves breaking the treaty. That
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
that agreement, but I'm not really concerned with the whole thing per se. But yeah, there
I
was
think another funny thing about this the Prime Minister Benjamin was that his brother was actually killed in battle. And I feel like if we're talking about circumstances that may affect a leader's personality, that might have contributed because him and his brother too, from what I found out, when all those periods when he left school, because he left school a lot to go and fight. He fought in Yom
mm,
Kippur and 6 days were another. So in one of his elder brother was like if a platoon leader for when they were trying to rescue their troops that were held rescued 102 out of 106. But I think that kind of thing definitely shaped his ideology. In a way, I feel it contributed to him. I mean, that was around the period when he left in the early 70s. He left everything in US, joined the Look It party, and then started climbing the ladder to becoming prime minister. So I feel like those kind of things too. Just sneaking back into what we discussed. Not that I'm trying to go deep into it, but that would have
yeah.
contributed.
So we can also talk about like the advisors and the people around you that advise you. It can also be a very, very significant factor in how you lead.
Influence.
Yeah.
Because talk about
Your inner circle.
yeah. There's a special woman called Chabi, and she was the wife of Kublai Khan. She was basically one of his biggest confidant, and Kublai would have probably done more damage to the international system and to the world at that time if Chabi wasn't by his side, to be honest. And you also look at
Mm.
when Joseph Stalin lost his wife, he was like, "I've lost my last shred of humanity. Now my heart is just hardened." You can imagine some of the things. And Yao Shu also was a very, very big advisor. And some of these people were the people influencing suggestively what these leaders do and make it seem like the leaders were the ones actually doing it, whereas it was basically the circle that the people they surrounded themselves with.
I think that's what this doctor was talking about. That's Dr. Luani was talking about one of the major influence of foreign policies being wives and girlfriends and women and the likes of
Oh
leaders
yeah, I remember
being
that.
like
And then it was like
top
I remember that.
influences. When Covan said something about platoon, about the brother of the now leader of Israel being in platoon and then fighting war, it just took me back to NYSC, that's National Youth Service Corps. Just imagining them taking each platoon from every state and say, "Oh, you're going to fight war in maybe in the north," or one thing like that. Would you go?
I'll pull a Donald Trump.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, I'm going back to Cameroon that day, like express.
Bro, first flight. They're not even gonna tell me nothing.
You know, there was was he a minister, or a senator, an ambassador that was saying something about them turning NYC to I think 2 years,
The
where
recruitment
you
something.
had to do like the normal 3 weeks, and then you do the serving of the states based on maybe your subject or your course. Then you now serve the nation fully for a
Like
whole
they do
year.
in Asia. All those
Yeah, in
mandated years.
Asia.
Conscriptions, yeah.
Ha.
That's
They
ridiculous.
will see a reduction in
But let's be honest,
NYSC.
who are we going to be fighting? It's Boko Haram. Those Boko Haram will kill us, bro. They will kill us all.
Well, me, I'll be in maybe the sick bay helping you guys recover.
Howard.
Oh my god.
Like bro, like, and also it seems like World War III might happen. The way the world is positioning itself, right? It's like Joe Biden is trying to call that war. I don't understand. I
They are
don't
always on the
know
edge.
behind it, but he's trying to do something.
You feel so?
Yeah, because why did he approve Ukraine using long range strikes on the road
Yeah, I saw that.
when
Sorry, to really speak on that, the funniest thing is that when I was talking to my CDS members last week, I already told them that with the appointment of Trump, there will be definitely a reduction in US tax dollars to funding any war. And because we already saw when this guy, the Ukrainian president, I've forgotten his name. I really don't like that guy, to be honest. But when he came out and was talking about how they need more funds, and we also saw that during the election period, Kim Jong Un and Putin were cozying up together and all that during the whole election stuff. And then we saw, I don't know if you guys heard, North Korean fighters were at the border, the Ukrainian border, between like they're already pushing people out. And then we see that a lot of random drone strikes were going on. There was a girl that was killed in Kyiv in the Ukraine.
Why are you trying to trigger happy dictators? That's not smart.
And then you will still come with the front of, oh, I'm a democratic government. We are a republic. We are fighting for the rights of people.
But you're letting people die. Like, it makes no sense. At some point, like, it seems like the people in the international system do not really price like lives.
Life, yeah.
To be honest, because
I just feel like they are necessary casualties for anything, whether it's development.
Yeah, it's just like in a game of chess where you sacrifice your pawn.
You have to sacrifice your pawn. Exactly. It's just like some people have to die to do anything.
No.
It's crazy, honestly.
It makes no sense because you know that Putin is a dangerous man. You know Kim Jong Un is an ally, and that guy has been waiting for an opportunity to use his baby missiles. And
his fingers are itching, to be honest.
You're giving him it on a silver platter. Like, come on, be for real. Anyway, I'm just hoping that like the war doesn't happen, and if it does happen, they don't start conscripting people from Africa because we're good.
Okay. Or the British start using their Commonwealth.
Yes, now that's what they do. That's what they did in the Second World War as well.
Yeah,
no, that would be very, very bad.
That'll be bad, bro. I'll run away.
Well, thank God, Cameroon
Where do you want to run?
That's even worse. Cameroon is under the French. That's
anyway, we can't run anywhere, to be honest. Let's be real. Yeah.
While you're in the process of running, they'll be grabbing you from the airport.
Telling you.
And the funniest thing is that they have drones that can literally pursue you. Laser tech is a new
thing on your phone.
Like
there's no hiding place.
It's nothing like you're going to exactly.
Wow. Anyway, I feel like at some point we need to discuss the future of the international relations and how it can be better. Because if we're being honest, I don't think international relations, like especially as an organization, the organizations that have been built out of it have been successful in any shape or form. I feel like the peace was...
I think they only have like minor successes at the beginning, and that just enters their head to believe they are doing something.
And even if you want to talk about...
They are running on past glory, to be honest. It's just all the things they were able to do to salvage the Second World War that they are still keeping up. Because aside that, so many other things. I think we're at the tension level and everything is boiling up, and we're just telling ourselves that it's fine.
Exactly.
Because it has not imploded yet.
Bro, exactly.
And we know we are headed there.
You know, the trigger. Something will trigger this stuff.
Yeah, I feel like we are heading towards a direction where governments or international, sovereign states start to say, oh, I don't want to be part of the UN anymore. Like a whole replay of the League of Nations.
Yeah.
And then all of them just start falling off that, this and that. Because I'm a sovereign nation. If I want to undo my membership to your nation, to your international organization, there is nothing tying me down.
As a sovereign nation, yeah.
Like scary. Very scary.
The function, the framework does not seem effective. It's not sustainable. And it's actually quite surprising how long it's been able to sustain itself. To be honest, it's quite surprising. I think the only aspect that has been able to hold it together is how much they've used the monetary and financial organizations that were brought up by the Bretton Woods effect. I think those are that you've been able to subjugate global South and basically make themselves richer. I think that's mostly the only successful area of the international community.
Don't even let us get into the whole World Bank thing, especially with Nigeria and the whole we are making Nigeria great again with WB policies.
Who did we even get loans from again this time? Is it from the US or from the World Bank?
The CIA.
Like the loan they approved today.
Is it the one of trillion?
Yeah.
I guess. Who did we get it from?
Listen, the debts were accruing. The debts were accruing. Our children, our great-grandchildren will not be able to pay it all.
Did you even see the tweet of the guy that was the vice president renovation?
The vice president what?
that he wanted to renovate his office with millions, if not billions, of naira.
Can you
It's
imagine that? For
disappointing,
what?
I can't lie.
And yet, the first lady will tell us we should pray, we should farm vegetables at the back of our houses.
You know, these are the kind of people that, you know, when I think about Remy Tinubu, with all due respect, and God bless her, I think about Maria Antoinette, and I'm just gonna stop there.
Yeah, just stop there, man. Yeah, let's not go.
Let's not go too deep into that, shall we?
Yeah, those who know, they understand that.
Yeah, they know. But
But
because
basically, this is the period where countries are submitting, like Germany submitting their budget, all countries are submitting their 2025 budget, and we are actually, do you see the
You mean
irony?
their reasonable budgets?
we are borrowing to do our
We're
budget.
borrowing in the time when people are planning to spend their own money. We're borrowing. It's very, very crazy, to be
Like
honest.
if you look at Nigerian leaderships and their personality and how it influences their leadership styles, it's just failure. Like
Failure and greed.
they have no plan, they have nothing, they just come there and vibes. I think the only leader we can actually say was personality was big and actually used it to an effect was Obasanjo. He wasn't totally successful, but he used it to an effect.
Yeah, he made a mark here.
I think Gowon too was cool
He was.
in terms of military.
That man is like the junior brother of Netanyahu. That guy killed like over a million Igbos. That guy was, but that's a story for another day. Eh, because if you start talking about Nigerian leadership, we just start, we can't even compare them to even the worst ones from the medieval periods. We can't compare the Nigerian ones. These guys have no value for human life. They have no value for quality of life. They have no value.
I'm basically keeping scores.
So like, it's actually quite sad, but yeah, what can we do? So yeah, I think we've had a quite fruitful discussion, and I'm just happy that I was able to shoot the first episode with my friends Covan and David. And this is TBD this is the TBD podcast, and we hope you enjoyed our discussion today. And basically, this would be our first episode, and just anticipate more episodes because we have more and more things to discuss. And hopefully, you enjoy hearing us talk. I hope it's not narcissistic to wish that you listen to us as often as possible, but I hope you do. Bye, and have a nice time.